Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome and thanks to everyone who made it out tonight. It's always a difficult decision about whether to close town hall or to cancel meetings. Our general rule is that we do follow the governor's lead. In making tonight's decision, I also consulted with the chief of police, who is here today, the director of public works, who is also here, the latest weather reports, and with neighboring towns to get a feel for neighboring roads. I did not hear from any members of the Board of Selectmen that they were unable to attend due to the weather, and so we are here tonight to conduct the town's business. If anyone in the public wasn't able to make it tonight, I'm happy to meet with you. Before we turn to public audience, I just wanted to give the chief and Nick Bolter a quick moment to update the town on the murder investigation, as they have other obligations later in the evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to touch on the investigation. I'm going to give you a brief piece of information because it's an ongoing investigation, so my correspondence will be limited. The case involves Melissa Milan, who was stabbed on November 20th, 2014 on Iron Horse Boulevard between Phelps Lane and Simsbury Meadows. The Chief Medical Examiner's Office determined that the death of Melissa Milan was caused by a stabbing. She was found about 8 o'clock on Iron Horse Boulevard. The Simsbury Police Department has been and will continue to work very closely with forensic experts, federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, family members, and friends of other members of the community to investigate the death. The department has generated information and leads during the investigation through both internal and external sources. We have received a great deal of information from the community, and we encourage continued communication with us. I cannot comment about the specifics of the investigation received or the specifics of the investigation. Specifics of the information and also the investigation. But I can tell you that the safety of this community is our top priority. We will continue to investigate to determine who is responsible for this crime. This investigation is going to take some time. It's not going to be over with quickly. It'll take all type of police work, investigation, to solve the case. That's where we are now.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the update.
It is number one priority with the police department. It's worked on every day since the day it happened. So.
Thank you. We appreciate your efforts on this.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. The Board of Selectmen meets twice a month to do the town's business. At these meetings, we invite comments of public audience, but because these formal meetings usually contain extensive agenda items, we do limit comments here to just 5 minutes. But please know that public audience is not the only opportunity you have to speak with the Board of Selectmen. For those who feel they need more time or want to discuss issues further, I'm happy to meet with you and welcome your input. Please feel free to contact my office to make an appointment or send an email. And I feel I speak for the entire board when I say you can reach any of us, and we're all available to meet with you at any time. And with that, I'll begin with public audience. Joan.
Joan Code 26 Whitcomb Drive. At the beginning of every Board of Selectmen meeting, First Selectman Lisa Heavner states that she invites everyone to comment in public audience for 5 minutes, and then, if time runs out, the people can make an appointment and speak with her behind closed doors, since the meeting contains, quote, extensive items on the agenda, end quote. The reasons for having public audience is for the public, the people who pay the bills, to voice their concerns in an open forum with SCTV televising their speech and transmitting it to the public. A robust democracy is based on a public forum, not a Tammany Hall environment. As an integral part of my campaign for First Selectman, I will be going on a listening tour to businesses, town offices, and public gathering places to listen to the concerns of the people in Simsbury. This forum will give an opportunity to make Simsbury the best it can be for all the taxpayers, free from political distractions. I will be an independent choice for First Selectman. At the present time, I will be gathering signatures of the electors in Simsbury in order to place my name on the ballot for First Selectman November 3, 2015. First Selectman Lisa Heavner has stated that the new release that Simsbury has, in her news release, that Simsbury has warming shelters in the library and Eno Hall. I would like to know what happens to Simsbury's homeless after closing hours, where the need for shelter is most important. Is there a plan for sheltering the most vulnerable people? This is the second time that this board has gone into executive session to discuss, quote, public safety issue impacting the town, end quote. It appears that the public is in imminent danger and our elected officials are trying to resolve the issue behind closed doors. Why does it require 2 meetings in executive session to resolve this issue? Since the public is not aware of the imminent danger to their lives, I can only surmise that what the issue might be. Is it that CLMP's closing its business in the south end of town will increase response time and to resolve issues that are wind and storm related? Is it that Dyno Nobel manufactures and stores PETN, an explosive across from the pot factory that is allegedly used by terrorists to make bombs? Is it the town's concern that the post office across from Town Hall has environmental and safety issues? There are allegations of workforce health issues due to working conditions, allegations of OSHA violations, asbestos, lack of snow removal, and ice on walks. It appears the post office has responsibility for snow removal and hired Simscroft Deco to remove snow from the parking lot and ice on the walkway. This has not been done in a timely manner since I had to navigate an icy walkway to deposit my mail. How many people use the post office and don't notice that the ceiling has water issues? There are allegations that the drinking water is contaminated. How can these issues continue without any remediation? Has First Selectman Lisa Hebner gone to the post office and noticed the deplorable conditions? Did the working conditions precipitate 2 employees dying at age 50 years of age? Who is responsible for the oversight of this building? Has First Selectman Lisa Hebner acted on my comments that having emotionally disturbed students at the Correct Diagnostic Center at 125 Latimer Lane are bolting from the premises, placing the police, Latimer Lane School, and neighborhood in danger? Is this a public safety issue impacting the town of Simsbury? Is having fewer and fewer volunteer ambulances service in that town and the surrounding area impacting response time on medical issues? Has this become a public safety issue? I am concerned that this board is rushing to judgment on the $8.3 million capital improvement plan for the senior center when there are options available at a much reduced cost. I would like to know why the Performing Arts Group has not presented their audit report to the finance director as stated in the contract with the town hall. Has First Selectman Lisa Hebner asked for compliance to the contract? What is the remedy for this violation? My campaign for First Selectman will have town manager form of government as my first priority. I don't need hearings to decide that Simsbury needs professional management. This board should act immediately on convening a charter revision commission and then move forward on the form of government. What we have now doesn't work with delegated responsibility at First Selectman's position. The public can vote on the proposed charter. Our elected officials should lead, not follow. Do your job. The Personnel Subcommittee, under the direction of First Selectman Lisa Hebner, has continued to ask for public comment on the Selectman's salary. The Finance Director has already plugged into a budget a salary of $75,000 for First Selectman with reduced responsibilities. The public can express their opinion when they vote at the budget referendum. We don't need more meetings. Thank you for listening, and I'll post my things on www.com or Simsbury.com and www. Simsbury Topics and the Simsbury Patch, which has put it on for me on a regular basis. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate your being here. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at public audience? Seeing none, we will move on to presentations. Tonight, we have a presentation from Oz Griebel, who I think, there he is, from Oz Griebel of the Metro Hartford Alliance to discuss how Simsbury might benefit from regional efforts at economic development and marketing. This was a recommendation from the marketing study, if you recall, that we have a conversation with Metro Hartford Alliance. And so we welcome Oz and thank you for being here.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Do you prefer that I sit or stand? Do you have a protocol?
No, whatever is most comfortable for you. We do have a microphone there if you want.
I think if you can hear me, am I okay?
I believe we can.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the board, for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Oz Griebel. I'm the President and CEO of the Metro Hartford Alliance, and for those of you not familiar with the organization, we serve as the economic development leader for the 39 towns, the now 39 towns in the Capital Region Council of Governments and also serve as the Chamber of Commerce for the City of Hartford. Our charge is to see that this region, roughly just under 1 million people, competes aggressively and successfully for jobs, for capital, and talent. And to that end, we are focused on a number of things in terms of marketing this region, which is why we're particularly talking to you here this evening, as well as to a number of other member towns. What I mean by marketing is talking to our current employer base here throughout the region to make sure that we understand what they need to keep the jobs that are here and to add jobs as they consider their expansion plans. It's also to focus on companies or employers from outside of the region that might look to come here to either have access to the talent base that we have, or if they're a consumer goods company, to be able to use the distribution and have access to the very market from the New York to Boston area. To that end, we do a considerable amount of interaction with organizations like Coronet, a professional association of real estate developers, to make sure that this region is known to them, that as they look at potentially locating or expanding one of their clients or their own business, that they're aware of the asset base that we have here, the talented and productive workforce, the transportation infrastructure we have, both in terms of the interstate highway system, Bradley Airport, and the relatively easy access into two major markets of Boston and New York. We are primarily funded to the tune of over 95% of our annual operating budget by the private sector. And that includes not only the UTCs, the major insurance companies, but also the 3 hospitals, Hartford, St. Francis, and Connecticut Children's Medical Center, as well as a number of the major the institutions of higher education in the area. The reason I'm here tonight is to talk with you, as we do every year with municipalities, to engage your support, both financially and on an intellectual basis, in trying to develop and move that marketing plan that I mentioned earlier forward in a more effective way. The Alliance is 14 years old. One of its antecedent organizations was the Capital Region Council of Governments, and that organization had a number of relationships with municipalities at which the municipalities invested to the tune of 20 cents per resident per year. That's still the annual assessment that we ask each town to invest. And of the 39 towns, and essentially we were working with 29 for many, many years until recently, when the New Britain Southington COG was merged into Capital Region Council of Governments. On average, we would have about 15 or 16 of the towns that would be invested in this on an annual basis. There were a number that have been with us forever, Manchester, for example, Glastonbury, and the like. And what we are doing as part of this presentation is asking Simsbury, as part of their FY16 budget, to consider investing at that 20 cent per resident level, which roughly, if I remember correctly, is something like 27,000 or 28,000 residents here in the city. So you're somewhere between $5,500 and $6,000 if I'm doing the math correctly. Just to give you a sense of what we have, and I want to make 2 points. The interaction with Simsbury and the other municipalities, while those dollars are important, it's really the idea of being able to demonstrate to our private sector employers, both the ones that are here today and the ones who are looking to come tomorrow, that we are an integrated, cooperative commitment by the municipalities and the private sector to move economic growth forward, employment growth and wage growth specifically. So the idea of being able to list on our masthead, if you will, all 39 towns, clearly sends a very strong signal to professionals who are in the business, as well as to the companies that are here today. Just, if I didn't say this earlier, on a ballpark basis, we have roughly an operating budget of $5 million. If you take all the dollars that is paid right now by the 15 or 16 municipalities, that's about $110,000. If we had all 39 in, take 1 million people, it's less than $200,000 at 20 cents. We're looking less about the money, although the money is always important in operating budgets, than we are about building that collaborative effort. So we are, at this time of the year, always going out. We're sending our renewal notices out, making presentations to those municipalities that are investors, making pitches like this one tonight to 10 municipalities that are not in. And at the same time, what I wanted the board to be aware of is that we have an ongoing negotiated discussion with CROG itself. There's been a discussion that's been off and on for all 14 years we've been in existence, but got the heat turned up on a little bit back in the summer, both with then Mary Glassman, who was then chairing the board, as well as Lyle Ray. That conversation has continued with Chip Beckett as he stepped in to chair the CROG board. They have appointed a working group to look to put together an agreement. Instead of having 39 separate agreements, which were 14 or 15 that we have now, the idea would be to have a single agreement with CROG, under which we would develop with CROG a marketing plan, a more comprehensive and ideally a more effective marketing plan for the region as a whole, and interacting with the individual municipalities, a more effective way of promoting the individual towns within that. So we have 2 tracks. You will receive a letter. I think they're going out with the snowstorm. Maybe they'll come out by sled and husky dog between now and the end of the week. And then at the same time, we're working with CROG. We're hopeful that we will be able to get something definitive before the CROG board, if not for their March meeting, then if not for the February meeting, then for their March meeting. So that's our current goal. And if that were to go forward, then the individual solicitations or requests that we're making for the towns would be subsumed in that single overriding agreement. So I appreciate the opportunity, Madam Chair, to take a few minutes of your time. Appreciate your listening, and would be certainly happy to entertain any questions that any of you might have.
Sure. What is your website so we can put that up on SCTV?
www.metrohartford.com.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the board?
I do. Being a former member of the Economic Development
Right.
Commission, and I know at times we've had this relationship
Right.
with you folks on and off. And I'm trying to remember the name of the gentleman that stepped in.
Probably would have been John Shimo.
It was, and then there was another guy with
Yes, Ted Montgomery.
Yeah.
Not Ted Montgomery. I know who you're talking. Yes, I know exactly. Who you're
Needless to
talking
say,
about.
there's
Yes.
been people that have come
Right.
to the meetings, offered services, and
Right.
so specifically for this investment to the town specifically, what kind of services?
It's a great question. I want to be very clear that our services aren't targeted to individual towns. It is about having a robust marketing plan for the region. So some of the preliminary conversations we've had with CROG is that if we go forward with CROG, we would have the opportunity we would want to build a working group within CROG to look at the marketing materials we have, make sure that they are appropriate and are comprehensive. Look at our website as it relates to that, and make sure that the towns know how our website works. As you all know today, anybody looking to come into a region really calls the professionals first. They pretty much pre-cleared you on using your website and the access they have to the data there. So the combination of looking at our website, what linkages might make sense to the individual towns. One of the things that when we were over here a couple weeks back and talking with the chair, we talked about the idea of having linkages off our website to every municipality's website. So the ease of getting from a site selector coming in. The other important thing that I'd want to emphasize to you is making sure that we understood, particularly for in the case of Simsbury, we're well aware of the Hartford site, but making sure that the real estate that you have here in town and in the other 38 towns, we know which of those sites are going to be likely to be developed for certain types of things. The distribution centers, for example, we've been involved in out by the airport and the Bradley Development League, the Walgreens Distribution Center, the other ones that have gone up there. That's part of working with Griffin Land and making sure that we are marketing what they're available, that we're bringing potential opportunities to them. It's more of that kind of an interaction and a representation than it is saying this. Now, if you called us on the phone and said, gee, we're looking to hire an economic development director, and you'd like us to participate on the site in the hiring process, we've done that. In certain towns, we would be delighted to do that. But the real emphasis that I want to make here is on what you're engaging us to do, which in many ways we're doing anyway. I mean, whether Simsbury comes on board or not in a given year, we're out marketing this region. The idea of being able to demonstrate to those site selection professionals that we're all in this together is a very important message to send them.
Any other questions? Thank you, Oz.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
you
much.
coming
Appreciate the
out.
opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, next we have on our agenda the legislative presentation from Representative John Hampton and State Senator Kevin Wickos. Welcome.
Thank you very much. If you take one and pass it along.
Go ahead, Senator. Well, thank you for having John and I back again. We're about 9 days, really, before we have some concrete things that I think would be of great interest to you, and that is the deliverance of the governor's budget, which kind of sets in motion where the funding is going for this next legislative session. I can tell you that right now we are most of the committees have begun their public hearings at the Capitol. I think that at the end of this week is the last day for the committees to raise bills for concept for a public hearing, and after that point, all the new ideas deadline will have passed, so there's a few more days left for that to occur. So I would classify us to be in the design stage. If you were looking at a project, we're in the legislature in the design stage, where we're just trying to figure out what bills we want to have public hearings on, I don't think there's been any bills drafted yet or have been voted out of committee to go on to the next step yet. So the nuances are kind of still being fluffed around. You might see some media reports as of recently as today and yesterday of some bills that some of the leaders in the General Assembly have said they're dead because they believe it's a controversial topic, whether that be recreational marijuana or gambling outside of the 2 casino tribes. I know myself, I've seen that in print in the past 2 days. So, and those are the folks that have the ability to say the bills are dead. So unless there's a big outrage and cry to get them to change their minds, that remains to be seen. But the biggest thing that affects you is what we do that affects your operations of the town. And we won't know until February 18th, to be quite honest with you, because the governor has to close $1.5 billion budget deficit at the state level. So we don't know what he's going to propose fully in his budget. So I know there's a lot of folks that are interested in hearing that. And if anybody wants to come up on the cap that day, just let John and I know. We can help you get a spot and come into the chamber delivering that message. But I don't have that much more than that to say other than to speak on the bill specifically in a general sense, but I didn't want to personally do that myself. Let John, I know he has some bills he might want to touch base with, but there'll be more to come. And I think that we'd love to come back. When do you have your referendum, in May? Yes. On your budget? Maybe towards the end of April, to give you an update on maybe some specific bills that may impact you at the municipal level, whether it's a cost savings or a mandate, whether there's monies heading that way to supplement it or not. And I think that, for speaking for both of us, we'd be more than happy to come back at the end of April to tell you kind of where we're going. Because we won't have our budget done until well after you have your budget done. That's just a fact. Sorry. We know.
We're well aware of that.
You guys understand. Preaching to the choir in that one.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you to the Board of Selectmen for having us. It's always a pleasure to be here. I know Kevin and I are honored to represent Simsbury in the legislature, and we are a month in a very difficult budget year, the latest numbers being a $1.3 billion deficit. The governor has made a series of cuts, which is in your packet, across specific areas, a lot of different areas, including DCF, Department of Education, DECD. Disturbing to me as co-chair of the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Caucus. He's making sweeping cuts to that area that we are eager to restore. So the budget will be a moving target, starting with the 18th with the delivery of his budget. Of course, as Kevin knows, till June, it'll be a work in progress with lots of opportunity for public input. And I know our priority is to make sure that municipalities remain harmless in this difficult year. A buzzword you'll hear this year is transportation. Obviously, all of us know that our transportation system is flailing, and you'll hear a lot about tolls. And I just put out a survey recently to our constituents about the implementation of tolls, and I welcome people's feedback on that. Obviously, a lot's changed since 30 years plus since the last time, and there's pros and cons on both sides of the issue. But we do welcome your feedback on that. This year, I'm on the Aging Committee. I still am on the Aging Committee, where we continue to address aging in place initiatives, protecting our most vulnerable. I was added to the Planning and Development Committee, where we address a lot of the regionalization efforts. And of course, Simsbury has led the way with a lot of regional efforts. We did make a lot of progress in that area in recent years, and we continue under Speaker Sharkey to press for more regional processes to save towns and the state money. So I'm delighted to be on that committee. I am this year Vice Chairman of Children's, and we have oversight of DCF, so we'll be looking to streamline and make sure that DCF runs as effectively as possible for our most vulnerable. We're also taking under consideration toxic chemicals and issues such as autism, and most importantly is the implementation of the Sandy Hook behavioral health plan that was adopted a couple of years ago to make sure that our mental health for our children is optimal. Some hotbed issues you'll be hearing about in addition to tolls. As Kevin mentioned, there's different banning of plastic bags is out there. That was just heard in committee the other day. The death and dying bill looks like it is, I haven't heard the latest if that is
Still out there.
And of course, the governor unveiled his Second Chance Society prison reform initiative the other day, which we'll certainly be discussing and debating in the weeks and months ahead. There's a list of bills that I've introduced. One is to put a moratorium on bonding in the next 2 years, except as it relates to major infrastructure. Bonding has become a very excessive way of state spending, and my attitude is that we are spending on the pools and other things before we address some of our most basic infrastructure. And so I've introduced that legislation. I've introduced a bill regarding a pilot program for persons with autism, as well as a bill granting a tax exemption for those who have served in the military, 100% tax exemption on their pensions. There's a lot going on. Again, this is the long session, so we're going full court press until June. As Kevin said, we're still in the preview section of our session, but it's very exciting. A lot of new faces, new leadership on both sides, and different dynamic. But again, remains our pleasure to serve with you and for you. We are monitoring the STEEP grant for, of course, the Veterans Memorial. We probably will have a better idea in the next 30 days, but Kevin and I continue to work on that. Of course, it's a project priority for all of us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, there's one topic that always comes up from municipal leaders, and that's on the subject of prevailing wage. It adds up to 20% cost to the projects that you work on. Well, this year, there's a public hearing, and it's an off-site hearing in Middletown. I think it's February 25th. I can get you the date. If you can't make it there, we'd ask that you send testimony in, and we'll give you the address in an email. John and I will send you that information. But we hear all the time from mayors and selectmen and first selectmen that we've got to do something about it. So we're actually having the hearing. So we need you all collectively and or individually to write letters of why you think it's something that the legislature should address. And there's a lot of different things, whether it's raise the, if you're not, does everybody know what prevailing wage is?
Might be worth explaining to the public.
Prevailing wage is something that has been in place since the early 60s, and is set when large businesses were trying to use people other than the labor, for organized labor, by cutting their wages. The government stepped in and said, well, if you're going to do that, we see you cheating the local workers by trying to bring in scabs or non-unionized folks. So we're going to set a wage in a specific work area that you must pay. Try to equalize that out. Well, since that time, at the time, the wage was set at $200,000 for a renovation and $400,000 for a new build or new construction. And we haven't adjusted that since the 70s. Meanwhile, the cost of everything has gone up. Not only the raw material, but the cost of processing the items, and then the general wage itself has gone up. But we have not indexed that prevailing wage level. So different ideas out there are to make a $1 million threshold for everything, or raise them up $200,000, double that, or double both. So they're just looking for input from municipal leaders as to what you think would work as well. And I know I have a couple bills in there that exempt steep projects from the prevailing wage, because we're just paying ourselves back in the grant form. So it really doesn't make any sense. But the hearing is wide open to just deal with the topic of prevailing wage. So we would ask, because it's an important subject for all local elected officials, for some testimony. You can just send it directly to the committee, and we'll give you an email with all the directions for that. But that's coming up soon.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick
Yeah,
ones.
Sean.
So recently, the car tax issues come back up. Obviously, that's significantly important to those of us on the municipal side, and it's really setting up, dare I say, a war between cities and towns because of the difference. I mean, you could keep us up to date on that, and again, I know that's been the speaker's hot button to get that through, but that, we did the math last time around, and that would be significantly damaging to Simsbury, and I'm sure Avon and surrounding towns, town budgets if we were to go to a flat mill rate for the car tax. So please keep us up on that. And then
We'll have an idea with the governor's proposal where the revenues are going to be shifted. That's something that he wants to going to as well.
But I haven't heard this year as much that that's high on this agenda.
It was on Capital Report this morning, actually, yeah. I don't know, it's the first one I've seen since then, but I know that it was pushed through, or tried to push through last time.
Yeah.
Obviously, and there's different pluses and minuses to it for everyone, but it's, on the math alone for our town, it's something we would
Absolutely.
really want to keep our eye on the ball for. I had one more for you. It was a good one, too. Anyone else?
I ask one
You
more
can think
thing?
about it.
One thing we're particularly concerned about is the deep stormwater runoff mandate. Do you have any updates on where that's going? We're still looking at significant cost increases, even with the revised plan.
When the revisions came out, I don't know what I haven't gotten any feedback, other than I talked to Lisa today.
Oh,
It's
okay.
still not
I'm
there for
sorry.
us.
I was,
Some of it's, Tom Roy is in the process of evaluating it right now. There's some ambiguities in there because they are reporting, but they aren't specific, so we don't know what the extent of the reporting, which for us is a lot of our costs, because we would have to hire people to comply with the reporting requirements. So that's one of the things we're evaluating. We haven't finished that evaluation. It is a little difficult to evaluate. I understand it's going to start in 2016, so it might impact this year's budget, but we're not sure. So we're trying to get clarification.
That's not done legislatively, that's
Right.
done through the regulatory process.
Yeah, I know.
It's only because, the towns spoke out that the legislature got involved and basically pushed back in addition. So we're one big front going forward. So that's why the DEP said, well, we're going to look back at it and we'll let you know when we're going to roll out our revision. And so, I consider that to be an ongoing process. And actually, have a bill in that because of that and because of paving, thing, they didn't want to offer the Marshall mix this year. It's a different kind of grade for asphalt paving, which most of the towns use. The bill I have in it says if any agency in state government wants to change something unilaterally and there's a cost pushed on to the municipalities, it must go through the Regulations Review Committee. I'm on that committee now. So we can look at it to say, well, what, does it make sense? So, how are we going to pass these costs on to our towns? And are we going to pay for any of that? And, really make sure that there's a checks and balances. Right now, the agencies, in this case, before, it's their interpretation of the federal guidelines that says we need to do it, but it went well beyond what the federal government had asked for and what other states did, because if it's a federal guideline, all states should be doing the same thing. So I think that's an ongoing process, but what concerns me is Governor Malloy was asked that question at cost.
Yes.
And he said, well, you're not going to get everything you want. And so, but didn't go into detail about what it is. So that kind of keep pushing. That's
It was
what-
shocking. I think
Well,
everyone
the
in the audience
cost
was shocked by that.
yeah. It was very
I
shocking.
was surprised to hear that.
Well, I did hear they're stepping it back, but on the flip
Yes.
side, I have reached out to the watershed, and they're concerned on the other side about the quality of our water. And so, while I certainly don't want to see any increase in funding or mandates, I think there's a balance that we want to make sure.
Of
And
course.
I think it would be helpful for all of us to hear. I'm going to follow up with Eileen Fielding this week to make sure her concerns are addressed. But the latest I've heard is that they have stepped that back considerably.
Yeah, I remembered with it, but there's plenty of other things I think the legislature could focus on, like disconnecting Hartford's storm system from their sewer system, and different other things that could probably improve the water quality far more than we sweeping our streets more. But
A lot of municipalities aren't as in good shape as we are.
right, we've
right.
been a leader in this town in terms of upgrading our plant far earlier than we needed to, and obviously we care very much about the river.
And to the extent the state does care about this issue, and they should, I absolutely agree with that. It's curious that they exclude themselves from these regulations.
I was just about to point
So
that out.
that's one thing that we found a little
Right.
disheartening and disingenuous. So to the extent, if you care about it, care about it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
And enforce it the
Feel the
same way
pain.
on everybody. Now there's no way to tell, for a town that's not in compliance, what happens? And for the towns that are taking on the cost.
Don't get them to fix
and
that yet.
doing
just in
the-
case.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
I wouldn't want to be on the
No.
non-compliance list. I remember the other thing we kicked around earlier with regard to transportation, constitutional amendment to actually keep the transportation money that we pay now in the transportation fund. Is there any traction to that? What are we hearing on that?
I haven't heard anything on the cover, but there is the will, I think, on both sides to see whatever monies go toward transportation, but, the lockbox
I'm sure that's frustrating for
Well,
both
the
of you as well.
Republicans came right off the bat and said the only way we'd agree to it is if it was a constitutional amendment. And the governor said, I'll do a constitutional amendment. So we said, get a bill out there tomorrow and we'll get it done. But it has to go through the process. So it depends on who has the key to the lock. It's no good unless you have something that really doesn't allow it to happen. We're not supposed to do sweeps, but we do them, and it's got to stop. That's the thing. So,
I mean, it's, tolls might be a problem, a way to solve it, but we've been paying into transportation funds longer than I've been alive, and we're not using that money for transportation, so.
And everything's falling.
if the bill comes out, I think it will pass on a huge bipartisan, if not unanimous scale, but it just depends on what happens behind the scenes in the committee level. I don't serve on transportation, I don't know if you do or not, so that's what we're originating.
That's all I got.
So, yeah.
That was
That was
the other
it?
one.
Anyone else? No. Okay,
Please
thank you.
keep in touch.
Yes, and we will certainly welcome you back in April.
We welcome anybody
So-
to bring to us, email us,
So
call
John and
us.
Kevin, if you could just contact Joanne when you're ready to present in April, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
We'll get you right on there.
Both for your service.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for coming in. We appreciate the update. And thank you for your service. We'll move on to the first Selectmen's report. As the storm abates, we are starting off by reminding residents to help clear fire hydrants. We've made it through yet another significant snowfall, and I'd like to commend our Public Works Department and our police and Parks and Rec, who actually do a lot of snow clearing as well. Jerry, thank you. We put parking bans in place during the past 3 storms, and that made it possible for our work crews to clear the roads and keep them open for emergency personnel. And I want to thank residents for complying with these bans. It has really made the work of town staff easier and more effective. As I mentioned, we are asking for your help in clearing fire hydrants. This helps the fire department, in the case of an emergency, have access to the hydrants that they need. With the weather expected to remain cold, residents are invited to take advantage of the warming centers at Eno Hall and at the library. If someone is struggling with heat or needs a place to stay, they can certainly contact our Department of Social Services and they can assist with that. Also, I want to let all state residents know you can call 211 for advice on that as well. Finally, if you have not already done so, please visit the town's website and register for CT Alert and the town's community alerts. This is the best way we can keep you informed of emergency situations. When we learned that CLP, which has been renamed Eversource, since we learned of their decision, was planning to close its area work center in Simsbury, we contacted Eversource and asked them for a meeting concerning the proposed closure. Earlier today, town emergency personnel, including Chief Ingridson, Emergency Operations Manager Kevin Kowalski, Tom Roy, Jeff Shea, Tom Cook, and I met with representatives from Eversource, including its Vice President of Electrical Operations. Kevin Wickos and John Hampton were also in attendance. Our primary concern is and remains the safety of the people of Simsbury and town employees. Simsbury raised our concern that Eversource's decision will negatively impact public safety by increasing response times to emergencies. We requested the following information, which Eversource has agreed to provide: protocols and plans for staging areas for Simsbury for upcoming storms. Eversource expressed its willingness to work with Kevin Kowalski to find possible staging locations within the town of Simsbury. A copy of the Public Utilities Regulatory Report on Eversource's response times. An impact analysis for time lost to get parts and materials, given that they will now be located outside of Simsbury and that may impact response. Follow-up information on how Eversource is coordinating with Frontier on response to incidences, and a written commitment from Eversource that it will provide an emergency response time of no more than a half hour for Priority 1 incidences, as well as a protocol for meeting this standard. In addition, Eversource will arrange a tour of its dispatch area so that we have a better understanding of their emergency operations. We have asked them to reconsider the proposed relocation of the 69 employees, which will also impact Simsbury's local economy. I would like to thank Representative Hampton and Senator Wickos, who will be following up with Frontier, which is the renamed telephone company, about arranging a meeting with Simsbury emergency response officials. The reason why this is so important to emergency response is that when crews are out clearing the roads and there is a wire down, they have no way to identify whether it is an electric wire or a cable. So there has to be a coordinated response to allow for efficient cleanup. On Friday, February 6th, the Chamber of Commerce hosted its annual Breakfast Leaders, which gave businesses, residents, and town officials the opportunity to network and to learn from 2 excellent speakers. Mike joined me there. It was a wonderful presentation. These speakers shared some powerful insights into successful management. Both presentations were very well received. This was a wonderful event, and I would like to thank the Chamber President, Ron Locandro, and Executive Director Lisa Gray for putting it on. Since we started our prescription drug card program in December 2012, I am pleased to report that 2,146 claims have been processed, and residents have saved $124,900 on drug costs. The program is specifically designed for underinsured residents, and the cards can be picked up in Town Hall, at Eno Memorial Hall, and at most drugstores in the area. If you are interested in getting a card and would like assistance getting one, you feel free to contact the First Selectman's office, and we would be happy to help you. With that, we will move on to our agenda items. The first item before you is a motion to approve tax refunds. May I have a motion to approve tax refunds in the amount of $24,236.08?
Move that.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Before you is a motion to extend the leases for the 2015 planting season for Darren Hall and Anthony Napolitano for town-owned agricultural properties. The town has also received new inquiries about using town properties for agricultural use for the Barndore Hill Triangle, which has not been farmed since 2012, and the Baker property. The Baker property is located in Simsbury Meadows, and the town engineer is recommending the property not be leased for 2015 in consideration of the ongoing discussions related to the Simsbury Meadows master plan update. The Barndale Hill property in your packets, you have a memorandum from town engineer to Tom Cook regarding recommendations for that property. Mr. Shea is looking for direction from the board on the options listed. At this point, we have not given direction, so it is not his recommendation to lease the property. The proposal from Darren Hall will require an assignment of the lease from George Hall to Mr. Darren Hall, which is permitted under the contract, and which council will prepare if the board wishes to extend the Hall license. I'm going to let Jeff Shea speak to this. I think you have maps of the properties.
This is supplemental information.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Jeff.
That area is.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, sir. So as First Selectman said, the extension of the lease is, we pretty much allowed the farmers to continue on the land that they've leased. The leases are generally 3 years. Because it's organic farming, they go into they supplement the soil. So there's a kind of an investment in the land that the farmer has to make to get a productive crop. They need to know early in the year so they can buy their seed and their fertilizer or whatever, so they can be prepared to farm, on a timely basis. So the two leases that we're suggesting be either assigned or extended are for a single parcel that are shared. It's one parcel. It's on the east side of Barndore Hill Road. Both farmers have been good stewards of the land based on my review of the file. There hasn't been no issues with those properties. So we would recommend again that the Napolitano lease be extended or renewed, and the George Hall lease be assigned and renewed to Darren Hall. In terms of Barndore Hill Triangle, that's a fairly large piece just to the west of these parcels. It was acquired as part of the Meadowwood development. At one time it was farmed, as Lisa said, but not since 2012. Last year there were some complaints on the condition of the property because it was not mowed. As such, that memo was generated that's in your package. Since then, Parks Department did go ahead, contract to have it mowed to remove the ragweed, and so right now it's in reasonably good condition from an aesthetic point of view. But we did get unsolicited proposals for possible agricultural use of that land. So we're asking the question, or suggesting 3 possible alternatives to move forward with the land. Informally, that land has been kind of used as a bird habitat, even though there's no restrictions on the land. So there was some desire to continue that, or possibly share that use with agricultural use. My understanding is generally the land cannot be mowed in the spring for bird nesting habitat. It has to be actually deferred to the summertime. So there's a possibility we can get a farmer in there who would either set aside an area for bird nesting and/or do that one-time mowing in the area used for bird nesting areas. But again, there's no restrictions on the land. There's no requirement to do this habitat sort of development. So
The town did not go out to bid for that.
that's right. So that's kind of the history on that parcel. In terms of the Baker property, that's the field that's actually adjacent to the Farmington River. Because we're looking at potentially developing trails in that area, we didn't want to kind of encumber the area this year. There's a potential that we may be into a project by the end of this construction season, and we didn't want to have any conflicts with what we wanted to do.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Shea? Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your preparation for tonight.
Are there any other wildlife concerns on that property other than the birds?
I'm not an expert on habitat, to be honest with you. I'm kind of, again, working from the file.
I actually live near there, and I know Mr. Payne lives near there too, and we see a lot of wildlife. I don't know if you do, but, right up to like what everybody calls the bobcats, and other large creatures. And I didn't know if there had been any other examination of that property for other types of wildlife that are there.
Open space.
I think there is actually something in the file on that. There was some surveys that were done at some point in time.
And
I did that years ago, yeah.
Is this part of the open space review, or no?
I don't think that there's been any discussion on it, but certainly it would be in the mix in terms of our inventory.
We've got Don Rieger is working on that right now. Jerry did a great job putting together an internship description, working with University of Trinity. So we're hoping to get some of the inventory done. Like you say, it's important to know what you have
What's
before
there,
you know
yeah.
what to decide. But we don't have the staff to do that. So I want to congratulate Jeff and Jerry, and they also worked with Hiram Peck and the Open Space Committee to come up with creative ways to help get that process begun. I'd like to thank Don Rieger, who's done a yeoman's job of beginning the process, and staff for coming up with creative solutions to helping to get it completed. But that is, you're absolutely right, it's crucial to know what we have before we can determine what we want to do with what
And I
is out
assume
there.
by doing these leases, it's sort of the same theory that we had on the Dewey property, since we are not going to do anything immediately with our open space inventory, that it's okay to, my only concern would be the wildlife thing. If we're going to allow full-scale farming, that would have an impact.
Except that's not before you.
And that's
right?
not, yeah,
These are for existing
That would be-
agricultural uses.
exactly.
You're right, but you raise a great point.
that would be my only concern on that. So other than that, no.
I know these, the three parcels were actually, when the town ended up going after these parcels as part of the settlement, this was actually part of the wildlife corridor to connect the Great Pond area to the McLeans. And there is extensive wildlife out there, four-legged, not just two-legged. But I know I personally, I'm 2 houses away on Holcomb Street, would like us to see do something a little more active with the triangle portion. I had a number of people approach me last fall because of the ragweed was horrible out there. It was a bad year anyways for the pollen and everything, but it was in full bore. And once it finally got cut down, thank you very much, Jerry, because it was noticeable. The cars weren't quite as green at the end of the day. But I think the two organic farms there have done a very good thing for the town, and that's nice to see.
Thank you. And I agree, we do need to look at all our properties and the best uses, but what impacts they have on habitat and fauna. So we are beginning that process. It is a slow process. I will tell you, we are understaffed in that process, so it will take longer than if we had a full staff. But we are beginning that process.
So before us this evening is the 5-acre Napolitano lease and then the 17-acre Hall lease, is that correct?
I thought that was 15 acres. Jeff, what is the Napolitano, is it 5 or 15?
Five.
Oh, 5, you're right.
One is 5 and one is 7.
5 and
5 and
17?
17, yes.
And the renewal terms are till when? Because
It's just a one-year lease.
Just
right?
one
Just
year.
a 1 year? Okay.
And we'll do
Others.
2 separate motions because one has an assignment.
Yep.
So is there any further discussion?
And then, just so I'm clear
Yep.
from the packet, then we're going to talk about what's next with Barndore Hill, so potentially an
We
RFP?
could. I didn't have that as a discussion point. That was not brought before you by the town engineer. We can have an initial discussion if you want, though.
I just was trying to understand what's actually before us.
It was just
this
in
evening.
the interest of full disclosure and transparency of government. He wanted to let you know
Okay.
all information he had received, but I didn't have it as an action item for tonight.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we studied the heck out of that triangle when Mike and I were on planning together, and then subsequently when we were here, and there's lots of different schools of thought for that, but
There are, so
trust me, there's
probably-
bobcats in my backyard.
It's probably a
too.
very extensive
But,
conversation that we could do in the future if you'd like.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. So with that, I move that we extend the Napolitano 5-acre lease for a period of 1 year as proposed.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I will move that we allow the amendment of the ground lease license, between the town of Simsbury and George Hall to reflect the change of licensee name to Darren P. Hall.
Yeah, so could I offer a friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
If you move to assign the lease to Darren Hall? Can you add that?
Oh.
Use just the
and-
legal way. Yeah.
and- Yes, what you just said.
Okay. So for Mr. Hall, for an extension of the Barndore East property ground lease and to assign the license to Darren Hall. Does that work?
Yes,
Okay.
1 year, right?
For 1 year.
For 1 year.
second
for 1 year. Mhm.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. Next, we are going on to a somewhat complicated motion, although we really don't have any choice in it. It is to authorize the first selectman to sign the master municipal agreement for right-of-way projects with the state of Connecticut. This agreement was proposed by Connecticut DOT and is meant to improve how the department conducts business with municipal partners by streamlining the agreement process. Once the agreement is executed, the way it works is project-specific information and monetary terms will be set forth in project authorization letter, a PAL. I'm sure you guys
Yeah,
are
the
riveted
old
by this.
PAL.
Yeah, I'm sure you're riveted by this. Issued by the department to the municipality for individual rights-of-way projects. The PALs are expected to take only days to execute as opposed to months, as currently required. We do not currently have a right-of-way project with the DOT, but executing the agreement will streamline future projects, and all these go with construction projects. The right-of-way projects are tied. They also enable, by signing this agreement, it enables us to apply for grants that we wouldn't otherwise be eligible for. And I'll ask Jeff to comment on this. This is across the state. All municipalities are being asked to do this.
Here's another letter, just we wanted to mention. I should have included this with the package. This is
Thanks.
another letter for the, traditionally, DOT projects are broken down into 3 phases: the design phase, the right-of-way phase, and the construction phase. Because of the
you.
bureaucracy required by individual agreements for projects, a project could, in the past, take 5 to 6 to 7 years sometimes to complete. By that time, sometimes the budgets for the projects have doubled because of construction costs increasing. So this process, having a master agreement, a 10-year agreement, will hopefully cut some of the time off of a project. Traditionally, an agreement might take 6 months to process through the AG's office, preparing it and all that. So putting 3 phases of the project, if you save 6 months off each phase, you're saving 1.5 years to 2 years. So that's the intent of doing the master agreement, that it can be done quickly with the PAL. The PAL basically establishes the administrative requirements, the financial requirements. And as Lisa said, the right-of-way projects per se are actually tied to a construction project. So if you were going to widen the road with federal and state money, it was being administered by the DOT, there would be a right-of-way phase for the land that would be required for that project. So this is a way of expediting it. The state's kind of trying to get out of the business of managing local roadway projects, and this is another way for them to kind of steer clear of it. Gives the town the option to manage the right-of-way phase, or if the DOT has time, in their staff, in their schedule, then they would potentially do that right-of-way phase for the town. So that's it in a nutshell.
Any questions for Mr. Shea on this? It is something that we do appreciate the state for looking for ways to create efficiencies, and we're looking forward, and hopefully this will be a benefit. So we're looking forward to working with them on that.
It's just like almost too good to be true.
Well,
I was going to say, anything
We'll
that's
see.
streamlined.
Has
is
anybody
good.
tried it yet?
It's really new. It's been around for
What happens if they don't
years.
get back to us in days? Do we just get to do it?
Probably not, no, because it's a reimbursable situation.
Then you're back to
Waive this piece of paper.
then you're back to 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
so if there are no further questions. I'll take a motion to authorize the first selectman to sign the master municipal agreement for right-of-way projects with the state, subject to council approval.
I believe I'm going to be reading this, so I will go ahead and make that motion. Resolved that the Simsbury Board of Selectmen may enter into with, and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency...
You're on the wrong one.
You jumped ahead.
Nope.
You're reading two.
What?
You just,
We're just on the municipal, and you jumped ahead.
That's
Yeah.
Next one. We're only on this one. It's an easy one. But now you get to read two.
now you get to do both of
I got
them.
so excited about that. Thank you so much. Resolved that Lisa Hebner, First Selectman, is hereby authorized to sign the agreement entitled Master Municipal Agreement of Right-of-Way Projects, adopted by the Board of Selectmen of the town of Simsbury, Connecticut, this 9th day of February, 2015.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now, Nancy.
You jumped the gun on that one.
Before you is a request for a resolution authorizing the first selectman, which Nancy Hasse will read, to enter into an agreement for the emergency management performance grant with the state. So it sounds similar. This is essentially a pass-through. The town does with the fire district, as only towns are authorized to accept this grant. The fire district provides the matching funds required, and this grant funds the deputy emergency management position in the town EOC and part of the civil preparedness director's salary. This is something we do on a regular basis. We've done this many times throughout the years, but it does require the resolution being read. And Nancy, would you
So I'll make a motion. Yes. Resolved that the Simsbury Board of Selectmen may enter into with and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, and any and all documents which it deems to be necessary or appropriate, and further resolved that Lisa Hebner, as First Selectman of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized and directed to execute and deliver any and all documents on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, and to do and perform all acts and things which he/she deems to be necessary or appropriate to carry out the terms of such documents. The undersigned further certifies that Lisa Hebner now holds the office of First Selectman, and that he/she has held that office since January 3rd, 2015.
just to clarify, I am a she.
She is a she. Yeah. In witness whereof, the undersigned has executed this certificate this 9th day of...
It would be 25th. You don't have to.
2015.
That'll
Yeah.
go to the clerk,
Very
and she'll
good.
sign it, and we'll get that all straightened out.
She.
Very good.
Second.
So thank you, Nancy. I appreciate you reading that. We usually give that to a freshman, so you're lucky, Chris.
It's a new year.
Well, it's not clear. Could you read that again?
Do you want the he/she?
We got some longer ones coming up. Watch out.
If you really want to.
Coming, Chris, so watch out. May I have a second, please?
I second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, before you, we have a motion to approve the fee schedule for Simsbury Farms Golf Course, aquatics facilities, and summer camp programs. These were recommended by the Culture Parks and Recreation Commission at their January 22nd meeting. The committee looked at other public and municipal facilities as well and projected operating costs, and Jerry is here today to speak to these. Thank you, Jerry.
You have on the submission in front of you at their January 22nd meeting, the Culture Park and Recreation Commission made recommendations on 3 sets of fees, which you have in front of you. These, in some cases, have actually been the result of work through the Special Revenue Fund Subcommittee, along with the Park and Rec Commission and Board of Finance, that have been working actually since last April to look at different solutions for closing the deficit in the Revenue Fund, and philosophically with different facilities, there were, I think, some different solutions, and in many cases, we were looking at trying to increase usage, and others, we were trying to increase revenue, and some through, or increase fees, and in many cases, a combination of both. So I'll be glad to address them in whatever order you'd like. Any preference?
I have a question on the aquatic summer camp fees. It is just to understand, in the 2014 column, there's 2 sets of fees, and then in 2015, you've just got a single set of fees in there. Can you just explain what the...
Yeah, I think it was the feeling that it was just easier for, well, one of the things that we do at the end of each season is to send out a survey to all our users, whether it's pools, camps, all our other programs. And one of the things there were a couple of things that came back. One was that people were becoming more sensitive to, particularly the season pass fee that had been steadily going up. And we had seen some signs of declining usage there. They also thought it was easier to consolidate those fees into a single fee as opposed to a child and adult. And that was really a result of the input that we received. So that was really where that came from. It is an increase over where we've been. It is one of the areas that we hope or project there will be a revenue increase from. I think if anything, it may also drive people more towards, back towards that season pass and, in that direction. So, but it's an option. We tried to throw some different options that would be, affordable, but also make them appealing to people depending on how much they wanted to use the facility.
So the 2 different fees are for child, adult, is that?
No, they're resident, non-resident. It's just one, yeah, the single fee for residents is $5, non-resident is $7. That's child or adult.
Okay.
Can I jump in and ask a clarifying? So in 14, you had $3 and $5 for resident, and non-resident $5 and $7, and now it's just, so that was child and adult. Now up above, you have $125 and $150, and it says $125 before $531.
That's right.
So is there a discount to buy them early?
Yeah, and
So
which we
now
will
there's no
still leave. Now, the discount will stay in place after May 31st. The season pass is not available any longer.
It's not available?
Right.
Okay, that's the difference.
But the other option, too, Sean, is that one of the things that we did institute in response to that, or somewhat of a middle ground, was to give that discount card, which allow them to pay for 10, get 11.
No, that makes total sense. I was just missing the disconnect. I was like,
again-
what's the fee after 531? So
Right,
there-
but
okay.
that'll go away. And
Yeah, it's
so
the
hopefully,
elimination of the
again,
option.
That makes sense.
I think it's a little more incentive for people to get that, go for that.
Yeah, get the revenue
that
early and
discount.
often. I like
Right.
that. Okay.
Has it always been like that?
I'm sorry.
Has it always been like that?
No.
Or is that a change?
What's new?
Oh, okay, so we should,
And we may change it again after this year. It's the first time we've done it.
Okay.
But I think we're looking at some different options and some ways to, again, remain affordable, but we're, try and get more, people back into the facility.
right.
No, that's one of the things we charged you with, was trying to get creative in terms of, what your fee structure was, and not only just fixing it from an increase standpoint, but attendance was a big piece of that, so.
Yeah.
You're going to need some good publicity on that.
Yeah.
It will, and that was one of the things that the commission was, I think, adamant, and rightly so, that we've really got to, through our website, to the town's website, through all our, the means that we have to communicate that there is a change, and that,
Right.
people should take advantage of it.
Well, and plus, with the season really starting, it's going to be weeks after that now, with the school session going on and on now, forever.
Snow.
It won't be until June 20th that people are thinking about going to the pool, and then they're going to say, oh, what do you mean I can't
Right.
get my season pass? So,
No, it's yeah, obviously publicity is a big part of it. I'll have to look at that in the marketing budget.
Yes, Nancy.
Other question, I'm actually skipping ahead to golf course fees now. And just curious, as I look down, I see that there's surcharges against all but the resident 9-hole weekend, and I was just wondering why there wasn't a surcharge against that.
I think there is one against every, there should be one against every category.
Yeah, that one is missing one, Jerry.
one just
I think it's
doesn't
just a typo.
I think it must be.
That's a typo.
Because it was right across the board that we did it.
Okay,
Everyone,
okay.
both
I
daily
figured.
fee and
Just-
season pass holders will pay that surcharge.
That would be $21 there, not 20, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Because it's $1 per 9.
That is a typo.
Yeah.
I see, okay.
And we talked about that fee during the committee again. That's intending to, back up, lack of better explanation, shift some of the CNR cost potentially out of the Board of Selectmen budget and towards the revenue fund for them to be self-sufficient from a lawnmower standpoint, from a minor, smaller capital improvement standpoint, and have the users fund that directly, which would potentially give us some relief in exchange for the other solution that we're talking about in terms of how do we budget. And obviously having the golf course folks, which are a heavy consumer of things like lawnmowers and trucks and other things that we need to buy there on a regular basis. And again, that fund would theoretically be self-sustaining and operate very much like our Board of Selectmen CNR fund and our Board of Ed CNR fund. So,
Just need to make sure there are no sweeps.
yes, well, we would be the ones doing the sweeping, so hopefully we
Well,
keep.
thank you, Jerry. We appreciate you and your committee have worked very hard on this. We appreciate the efforts you've taken and making great progress.
Can I ask one more quick question? I'm sorry. Did you get the same type of response from consumers, like the public, on the golf course that you got on the pool?
Not as much. We did on the camps, not so much on the golf. And the golf, to a large degree, is driven by a couple things. One is the survey that you have in front of you, and we try and look at, where we are in relation to our competition. We also try and look at where we are in terms of our own usage, and that's a big driver.
That's why I was wondering if they responded to the survey.
I think, quite frankly, I think people overall are satisfied, relatively speaking, with our fee schedule. I think there will be an adjustment, or maybe even a bit of a shock, when you look at the fee increase as well as the fee surcharge. It's a jump, and there's no two ways around it. But this is what we need to do to operate.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I think our users are a little more accepting of is when they see a fee increase that's going to go right back into the course, and which the surcharge is earmarked for. It is directly going to go into equipment, possibly smaller improvements. I think that's easier for users to accept when they know that. I think it still puts us within the range of where our other competition, our other counterparts may be. We have some other issues that are different from other courses, our demographics, our location. But through the I think some of the marketing initiatives we're taking, we'll address those, and we'll get through those too.
So you're going to need more marketing on that issue too, to explain the surcharge and where it's going and how it's dedicated to.
Jerry Wetchin's been talking about that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, with the golf leagues for over a year now.
Yeah, it has been.
This is not a new item that's kind of popped up.
Longer than a year.
It's something obviously we discussed heavily, so I think the reason it's in there is because there wasn't a lot of resistance, at least for the folks that were down there regularly, from the way it's been marketed to them. So I think there's a lot of comprehension at the resident, regular user level. The trick's going to be educating the non-resident, more casual users of that. But that's why we've got to continue to look at those fees and make sure they're right. It's a moving target. I mean, if it rains for the whole month of July, it doesn't matter what the fees are. Right.
And you do reach a point where if you charge too much, you get decreased use. So you're watching that line very carefully, but it's not a hard line. It's something you guess at, and you hope you make the right guess.
Yeah, I was just curious at the survey results and how that was working out.
One more question
Yeah,
here. Your totals columns over here on the right-hand side speak to town revenue and surcharge revenue, but I just was trying to better understand the numbers here, because it looks like you've got north of 17,000 against the resident, non-resident, but you've got a number of 45 down here, which...
The 45 is strictly the surcharge. Which is earmarked. Yeah, that's just a surcharge piece. The column on the left is the town revenue. That's the revenue, the projected revenue increase that will go into the revenue fund.
Right.
For the golf. The 45 is in addition to that will go.
So these are additions, they're not totals.
Right. Well, I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, is you've got one against resident, one against non-resident, and is this the figure against season passes and carts? And it's not the total of all of it? I'm just trying to...
It is the total. The carts are not, there is not it's somewhat...
So no surcharge?
Yeah,
Okay.
there is not a fee increase this year, so it won't involve, the surcharge will not apply there. That's basically just a total up the season pass and daily fee.
So there's just a figure of whatever the total for the
That's
surcharge
correct.
is missing there,
Right.
that takes the 1717 plus that figure and comes to the 45?
Correct.
Is that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
It's 11 grand for the season passes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? May I please have a motion to approve the 2015 fee schedules for Simsbury Farms Golf Course and aquatic facilities, as well as the summer camps programs?
I move that.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate all the effort you and your committee put into that. Before you, we have a letter to the Attorney General and Consumer Counsel regarding the proposed closure of the CLMP area work centers, now called Eversource. On January 20th, the town of Simsbury was informed that CLMP, or Eversource, would be closing its area work center in Simsbury and relocating to Cheshire, Torrington, and Hartford, areas more than a half hour away. The town immediately sent off a letter requesting a meeting with management to reconsider their decision based on our concerns that the proposal will increase the response times for Priority 1 incidents, which require a response time of no more than 1.5 hour, endangering our citizens. In my first Selectmen's report, I sort of detailed for you the steps that Eversource has agreed to take. Since that time, Attorney General George Jepson and Consumer Counsel Ellen Swanson-Katz have asked PURA to launch an investigation into the consolidation and closure of our CLMP facilities, including Simsbury, to ensure the company can respond to emergencies in an appropriate time, and that CLMP is not unduly laying off Connecticut workers. Simsbury welcomes this advocacy and intervention as to why the closures are necessary, whether they will impact emergency and storm readiness, and to evaluate whether Connecticut employees are being unduly impacted. Before the board tonight is a letter from the Board of Selectmen to Attorney General Jepson and the Office of Consumer Counsel Katz, fully supporting their request for an investigation into CLMP's proposed consolidation and offering our assistance to help with their initiative. I did have a discussion with Mr. Cook about whether we should write this letter directly to PURA, but because there is an issue of standing, we felt the appropriate vehicle was to use the advocates that do have standing, which are George Jepson and the Consumer Counsel. If at a later point we do intervene and engage in standing, we'd have to consult with counsel, but that could be a step we could also take in the future. But that's why it's written to Attorney Jepson and Ms. Katz. Does anyone have any questions on that? Sean?
So from my time on public safety, we have a prioritization sheet, right, where there's priority ones, et cetera, down the way. You know, McLean would obviously be towards the top. Obviously, the EOC is towards the top. And CLMP previously has an obligation, no matter where their structure staff from, to restore based on that prioritization list, right?
This is a little different. The Priority 1 incidents are when there is a life-threatening emergency.
Okay, so that's not...
It's not for restoration of power. It's actually when there is an emergency, like, for instance, when our Public Works
When the
driver was caught under a live wire, CLMP was able to get there within 20 minutes.
Okay.
Obviously, if the trucks are located further away, the question is, can they respond in a timely manner? We know that if they don't, there is risk to life and bodily injury. We are getting information from CLMP, I guess, Eversource, to lay out how they're going to ensure that this continues with the change they're making, and to go over their protocol with us to ensure that that happens. Obviously, if the trucks are in Cheshire, that's more than a half hour away. So we're looking to get verification and understand their protocols at this point.
So at this point, should we wait to get the information from the meeting you had today?
I'm inclined to go ahead and send the letter.
We're assuming they're going to answer in a way we don't want.
No, I mean, I think it's always appropriate. PURA is the regulatory authority that's charged with making sure that these decisions are consistent with public policy. It's encouraging the Attorney General's request that the PURA do its job and investigate this. So I think it is appropriate to do that at this point.
So just so I'm clear, because the memo that we have states that Jepson and Katz are looking at this to make sure that CLMP does not lay off a disproportionate number of workforce.
Yes,
First and
they're
foremost.
looking
So
at a broader.
is it a two-point investigation?
Yes.
So So it's not only left,
Well,
but
they haven't.
it is the response
They
time?
haven't said what their investigation is pure at this point, but they are requesting their economic impacts of the decisions that CLMPO is proposing and also the public safety.
So should we wait to find out what their investigation scope is before we respond to them?
You can. I will send the letter on my own if you don't care to join, because I think it is
It's not a question of
appropriate.
join or not. I don't know what I'm sending them a letter on yet.
You're asking them to investigate and make sure that this is consistent with public policy and the public's interest. It's totally up to you.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'm done.
Are the other towns impacted doing the same thing?
I don't know.
I mean, the last time we took somebody to task, we talked to Granby, we talked to Avon, it was on the water issue. We had a lot more facts before we fired off the letter, I guess.
Well, I feel confident that Simsbury will be impacted because they are leaving Simsbury. So this is a direct impact to our town. I don't think I need the other town's input as to whether we should be concerned about this. I am concerned about this.
I wasn't implying that you need the other towns.
Yeah.
I was just curious as to whether or not.
I certainly raised it at the Farmington Valley Collaborative. They were interested in following this issue. It does have a bigger impact on Simsbury than some of the others.
I mean, at least I agree with you. I'm not arguing. I assume it has an impact, but I don't know. If they're
that's-
dispatching their trucks from Cheshire now and it's working.
Precisely,
I have
but
no
that's
idea where the
why,
trucks
but that's
came
why
from.
you do the investigation. Who should do the investigation? The authority that's charged with overseeing them.
Right, and they are. We just don't know what their scope is yet.
Well, they aren't. Attorney Jepson is asking for the investigation,
Okay.
and I do support that request. But it's, if the board doesn't want to sign, I'm happy to send the letter on my own.
Yeah, again, I'm not suggesting that, and please don't put words in my mouth.
I would just say I don't see this as hurting too much. In other words, we'd be working on two parallels with this.
Correct.
So, you met with all these folks. They're looking into getting back to us on the concerns that we have. But at the same time, we're just saying to these folks, we want to initiate, request that you initiate something in terms of the scope of what that might be. I would imagine, hopefully, that the two parties, the two efforts will be speaking to
Of course.
each other and can work to make sure that whatever the scope is defined, it includes the things that are of most concern to us.
Of course.
So,
I think that makes sense, Nancy. I really looked at this as following every course of advocacy that we had to make sure that they were responding to the risk, so.
Could we get a copy of their response when they send it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is not a blindside to CLMP. I did let them know that the board would be considering this action tonight. They were aware of that.
Fair enough. Do you need a motion from us, or how do you want to do this?
What I would do is I would ask for a motion to approve the letter as written, and then after the meeting, we'll pass it around to be signed.
All right, so I move that we approve with obviously amending to the new name.
Can do that. To Eversource.
I assume that's
Eversource.
appropriate.
We can absolutely do that. I think they will know who we were referring to, but
Yeah, I don't really care, but.
so in other words.
well, we can
were
make the
gonna-
change and right after the meeting. He'll make it, and you'll still be here, so you can
Okay,
sign it.
okay, good
Yeah.
enough. All right, I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Before you, we have a motion to approve the tentative agreement between the Town of Simsbury and the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, local number 458, IBPO. I am pleased to announce that the town and the IBPO Local 458, which covers 34 positions, have reached a tentative agreement and has been ratified by the IBPO and is before you tonight to approve. Congratulations and thank you to those who were involved in the negotiations. On the town side, Tom Cook and Sean Kimball. For the police, the chief, Captain Bolter, Gary Gray, Scott Sagan, Dan Thibault. I'd also like to thank the members of the police department who approved this agreement, the Board of Selectmen, and the citizens of Simsbury for support of our excellent police department. We have an outstanding police department that has national accreditation through CALEA. This agreement fairly recognizes the police department's highly valued contributions to public safety of our community and is also respectful to taxpayers in these still difficult economic times. Tom, if you would walk us through the components of the tentative agreement.
Move up here. I've given you a summary of all the terms, and again, this is an interesting process this time around. I'm glad that we came out where we did. I think one of the things to say right off the top is that wages that are being presented here are wages that would put our police force in kind of the middle to the just upper side of the middle of the pack for our comparative groups. So this is that's the settlement that we're seeing both from other regular settlements and what arbitrators are issuing now. The positive here is that the police were willing to, that the officers were willing to step up their contributions in a couple of areas. One was in the in the OPEB world, where they're going to start making contributions, which step up by 0.5%.
Just for the public who might not know what OPEB stands for.
Certainly, that's the other post-employee benefits, employment benefits trust, and that is the vehicle by which we plan for long-term funding of retiree health. There are, when one looks at the wage increases, there are a couple of different areas where they're helping actually to offset that a little bit. Certainly one was their OPEB contribution. Another was the increase that was implemented through arbitration in their contributions to the pension plan. And that actually went up by 7.7, so that's a 1.3% increase. So right there, almost in that first year, we're seeing a large part of that wage increase offset. As you walk through this, there were a number of changes in health insurance. They've agreed to a high deductible health care plan as a voluntary option. We are watching very closely what's happening with the Affordable Care Act and what's happening with how they determine what and when the Cadillac tax applies. The HDHP, HSA has been thought of as a vehicle to help with that, but there's some question as to whether or not that's going to actually play out that way. So we've got the vehicle in place. If it turns out that's going to be a real benefit under the ACA, then we will have time in the next negotiations to talk about that with the police before we make a final decision.
Right, because that goes live in 18?
Correct, exactly. So this will expire 6 months before that goes into play. Well, exactly, and that's part of it. This is one where, I mean, in all the years I practiced law, I used to write summaries of legislation for my clients, and I couldn't even begin to write a summary of what actually the ACA means, because I don't think they know yet.
You'd make a lot of money if you could figure that out.
Yeah, a lot of people would there's a lot of money in there. What we do know is that they need to find a way to finance it. Their plan for financing it is to find a way to charge richer plans, and so that, if that holds true, then we're going to have a very tough time in our hands in a few years.
So they're just saying basically that the high deductible health plan could become one of those things they classify as a richer plan.
That's right.
Yes.
Depending on how much of the employee's contribution they're actually counting into it. It's we could spend the evening on that. One of the changes we're trialing here is for employees who opt out of town health care. There will be a $2,000 credit. That's quite a trade-off. We understand that there are a number of officers who may have spouses who get health care, and if that works, that could be a considerable savings for us. Similarly, part of the deal was the increase from 16% to 20% on health care contributions. That is significant. I think that's the kind of that is approximately $26,000 a year to us, that alone. So that was a real concession there. Our big concession was the retiree health insurance. Our police force receives health care from us through age 65 and not beyond. All of our other employees get health care both through 65, and then we have a supplemental plan that follows after that. So we did negotiate with them to provide coverage for their spouses with a contribution. The OPEB contribution we talked a bit about. You can see that it's 0.5 on one and 1.5 moving forward. As with our other contracts, that'll go for a period of, an employee will only pay that for 10 years. New employees will be paying the full 1.5 from the start. I realize I skipped something, and I want to drop back to wages. One of the things that we did was we agreed to a new wage scale, which increases the steps from 7 to 9 steps. So essentially, it's the same dollars, it just takes you longer to get to the 9th step. It would be a savings of about $7,700 over 7 years. Over time, when everybody moves to that new wage scale, it will be actually a fairly considerable number. So part of the thinking on this was the long-term planning for things like that. We made some changes in holidays that even the treatment of officers per their request. Those are the use of holidays was changed in a way I didn't even try to get into the description. It would have taken an hour to do that, but in close consultation with both the chief and Captain Bolter, we know that those changes will be cost neutral. And finally, the one of the goals we had before with the master agreement was to try to fix a problem in the way that the current pension plan covers employee contributions, essentially provided that you stop contributing at age 53. So that means that we've hired more and more officers are hired in sort of a second career, and so that means if you've hired somebody at age 43, for example, instead of paying 25 years, they were only paying 10. They're getting the benefit for the whole pension plan. So they graciously agreed to a memorandum of understanding on the side to take care of that issue. So that, I think, covers it. I'm happy to answer any other questions I can.
Thank you for your efforts on this. I know this was a tough negotiation. Appreciate your efforts and the efforts of the police department and Sean Kimball as well.
Hold on.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Cook?
Very straightforward.
Okay, well, thank you. This is a long haul. We're pleased to have it resolved in a way that's so respectful of the police department and the taxpayers.
Well, I think I do want to say that I want to publicly thank the negotiation team for the IBPO. Things actually moved a long distance here, and yeah, we had a couple of hiccups along the way. But ultimately, they worked very well with us. I think it's been a long time that a contract has been settled within a year of its expiration with that group. So it would have been great if we'd had it back in June, but I think there's the relationship is a good one at this point, and I look forward to working with them moving forward.
Excellent.
At this point, may I please have a motion to approve the tentative agreement between the town of Simsbury and the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, Local 458, as outlined in your packet?
I'll move that.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye. Congratulations, Mr.
Thank you very
Curtis.
much.
Well done.
We now move on to a presentation from Mr. Mancini, who is our Director of Finance. Right there? Yes. On capital improvement for the senior center, we had a request at our last meeting for the Director of Finance to consult with our advisor about bonding issues if we were to go to the full 8.3 number as recommended by the building committee. So Joe, if you could walk us through what...
So you have two documents in front of you, one being essentially an Excel version of last year's prior capital plan. The only update to it is the $8.3 million. Obviously, this is going to be different than what you receive in another month, but for
discussion purposes.
For this discussion purpose, it seems to fit. I worked with PFM Group. This is your financial advisor for bonding. Give you a little update on current market rates. Muni rates are falling through the floor. They probably will continue to do so for roughly the next 4 weeks. March 15th, roughly, is when there's a potential shutdown, when the Fed's going to be talking about the debt limit again. Traditionally, you see rates de-escalate up until that point. We're also going to probably be bonding over the next month and a half. So went back through the analysis that you guys had received last year, updated some of the assumptions. When I say updated some of the assumptions, updated the budget to be what actually your budget was. I escalated it every year by 1.17, I'm sorry, 1.8.
Which one are you on right now? Okay, yep.
Escalated those budgets by 1.7% per year. Showed with the 7% of the budget, which is roughly that's the cap, the recommended top level that you guys can bond to, and then provided an over-under on how much bonding capacity you essentially have. Now, one of the presentations you guys had received last year, you would have noticed that it looked like in a couple of years you guys were bouncing right up against that. That analysis that was put together last year essentially had you guys bonding for the projects as soon as they're approved. That's really not how capital projects work. Traditionally what happens is you guys approve it. Let's take the senior center, for example. You guys would approve the project for this upcoming fiscal year. You'd go through the work on doing the designs, picking the site, or other kind of site or use existing one. But it's roughly an 18-month window before you really spend that money. Well, I'm not going to bond for it on July 1st if you're going to be spending it 18 months later. I'm basically going to bond for it once you guys are completed. So that's how my analysis went. I looked at how are you guys going to be spending this money and when do we need to replenish those reserves. So
Obviously, you would take bond timing into account with rates, and
correct.
If there was going to be an escalation of rates, you would probably accelerate that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the assumption is 18 months, is that what you're saying? That's about,
Yeah, yes.
okay.
For the senior center, that's roughly how we profile it.
So in this, Joe, you've got the town debt service and debt capacity slide.
Correct.
And then on the left, you've got the principal, the interest, and the total, that's the existing debt.
Correct.
And then the debt limit calculation. So does the debt limit calculation take into account everything that's been approved but not yet bonded?
I factored that into the offerings on the next page.
Okay.
So, based on the 5-year capital plan that we have out there, this is how I envision you guys bonding. Roughly $6.2 million for this year, 6.1 in fiscal 16, fiscal 17 is when you bond for the senior center. So that's why that's such a large chunk of money. There's a lot of money.
These
Well,
obviously.
is fiscal 17 when the high school bond goes off? Is
I think it's
that
18.
why, or is that?
17's the
I believe
last
it's
year.
18.
Yeah, 17's the last year.
So that would cross over the last year of the high school bond, and then,
One thing that's kind of interesting with muni bonds, you borrow in 1 year, you get the cash, you don't actually start making those principal and interest payments until the next fiscal year.
Like buying a car, getting the first month free, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a year.
Yeah, no car payments.
You always pay for it, it's just more
I
interest.
know.
Second year it costs you.
It's always more interest.
They always get you.
Although at $1.25, it's not exactly terrible from an interest rate standpoint.
No, they're incredibly low right now. Even the numbers that we used in this analysis were conservative, because interest rates are actually lower than what we did in the analysis.
It is a good time for capital projects. If you're going to bond, you want to bond when the money is
This is a
low.
phenomenal time for capital projects.
If you know something's coming down the line, you do want to borrow because your costs go up if the interest rates go up. So it is worth considering that as a factor.
Yeah.
And I know the Board of Finance will be looking at that.
Absolutely. I do have a worksheet that does detail this. It's about 45 columns wide. More than happy to share it with any of you guys.
You can keep that.
I thought you would have done one. I would have liked
Yeah,
it.
we just like that you've done it.
Now, I want to thank
Have
Joe
faith in
because it
you.
did take a bunch of time and effort to work with our advisors, with Jeff Shea. Appreciate your effort on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is,
well, I don't know, since you mentioned Jeff, is that a realistic number? I mean, I really want to know if that's, because we don't know yet, and are we in the realm of fantasy here, or?
I think it's a good number for the program that's been just peddled for the last couple of years. We're hoping to have some more information for the board at the public hearing. We had a good meeting with the architect and with the staff of social services and senior center, and we're trying to come up with an alternative pared-down program. But we don't have enough information right now to give it to you. But certainly I'm comfortable with that number for the facility that we were going to build.
So would you say that number is the high side, or that's the high? So it could be
Yeah, we wouldn't be
lower.
going any higher than that.
That's high.
But it's a realistic number. It's not a very, conservative number. I think it's real.
The prior capital improvement plan showed 5.6, right?
Yeah, because that's my concern, is it's a lot more than what we saw last year for the senior
leap.
center.
Yeah, that number, I'm not sure how that was arrived at. I think it was kind of established as a number, not really with any basis.
But I think it was established a number, and these are always good analysis, but these scare me because I think this is analysis that was done a couple of years ago to generate the 5.6. We always run the numbers to see how much we can afford.
I agree, and we've had that conversation for this year, and I think the numbers that I've seen so far in the capital projects, they're going to be real. The only time you should see changes from here on out is a change in scope, or if you start pushing stuff out, you're going to see escalation.
Yeah, to my point is, if it's going to be 8.3 million, even if it doesn't fit the policy, we should still put it in there if we believe that that's the project cost, and if we believe in it, and that's the need, then that's what we should go with. But if, again, we're creating these to figure out how much we can max the credit card out every year, we shouldn't do these anymore. We should go through the budget process, figure out what we really need, and then do this. Figure out the merits of the project, and I know we're already down the road on this, but yeah, again, it's easy for everybody to say 8.3 million is the right number, because now we know we can pay for it. Well, should we pay for it? And that was, I'm looking forward to what we get back from the last discussion of what's the want versus what's the need here. If we truly need $8.3 million, I think we'll have a very different conversation than if we want $8.3 million. And it's, so it's going to be important to really kind of, as hard as it is, to throw this away for a couple weeks and look at what we truly need down there. And then come back, and again, we can figure out, that's really the Board of Finance's job to figure out how to pay for it. It's always dangerous to give this to us, because it's easy to say yes when you know you can afford it. But we really should be saying yes to what we need down there, so.
I don't think anyone disagrees with that.
No, I know you do.
My question is around sort of where the line runs if we say 5%, because our policy is not 7%, it's 5 to 7%. And so I think, just echoing Sean's comments, we are planning at the max on this against that policy, and there is a range to it, and I'd just like to see what we would be at. I get on the whole box, it's underneath me. Start
You get electrocuted.
Is the new information from the architect you mentioned going to be available before the public hearing next week, or no?
I can't guarantee that, only because we have very little time to work on it.
Yeah.
He does know that that is a request of the Board of Selectmen, so they are working on it. They should be able to give you at least a general parameters. It may not be as detailed as we'd like, but we should be able to have a general discussion at that point.
That's fair.
And I apologize not having been here for the last meeting, but does that include, renovating Eno to its highest and best use? Is that part, because that is some of the discussion that we had around some of this. And one of the items that was a walk away from a couple meetings back. And I don't think we've ever really seen numbers that speak to.
Well, I think that's what we were asking for.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
why
I
we
just
asked
wanted
the
to-
architect to come back and look at the Eno plans again, so we could get more specifics.
We didn't use the terminology highest and best use. It was really, I think, well, at least I harped on want versus need. Right. To some extent, I think that does.
I will say that the building committee did consider these issues. They've been working on it for 4 years, so they have been looking at this over time. And there is I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the Public Building Subcommittee's website, but they do list a lot of documents, and there's some great information there. Tom, did you have something? You
Just to
wanted
support what Jeff is saying, we did have a meeting with the architect, and to be very clear, that discussion was about whether or not a modified renovation of Eno was going to meet all of the needs all of the needs of what our social services staff defined as critical.
Okay. And also on that website, there is a wonderful document from 2011 that sort of outlines what other senior centers across the state have and what they have identified as needs. So that's a useful document, and I think that that was looked at and evaluated very carefully by both the building subcommittees and the senior center itself.
You know, and there's a number of facets, and Sherry, obviously, I think, sent an email this week to Mickey and to the rest of the senior center staff. We've got a library that's got a phenomenal amount of resources. We've got Culture, Parks, and Rec that does a phenomenal number of things for kids, adults, and seniors in this town. So that's, part of what we already provide. And, again, are we trying to replicate that with the new senior center? And does that make sense? Does it not make sense? It sounds like Mickey's got some thoughts around that too. So that would be helpful.
Yes, and
as we
they
go
do
through that
coordinate with those departments, but, and it's right, it makes no sense to duplicate services, but you do want to supplement and make sure that we're
Absolutely.
meeting the needs.
But we don't need another program room because we got a program room at the library unless we're maxed out and we don't have enough space. And to the best of my knowledge, we're not maxed out.
I think that's part of why we want to hear from the public on
Right.
what they
Right.
feel.
One of the limitations at the library is they're prohibited by state statute, I believe, from charging fees, so that does limit some of the programming that can be offered there. It's not a barrier, but it is an obstacle, and that's one of the things that I think the building committee considered as well when they looked at some of their evaluations and considerations, but
Okay.
worth continuing the discussion.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the information.
There's
guys.
no action on this tonight. Just want to remind folks that we will be holding a hearing on the 17th.
17th, right.
At 6 o'clock in the evening, and
At Eno.
at Eno. And if, I talked with Kathy Marshall, and she will make the dial-a-ride available for that evening if folks need it.
Excellent.
So, thank you.
Joe, are you going to be able to do a 5% or no?
I can send it to you right now.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. Yep.
I mean, the short answer is no, you'll never make the money.
Yeah.
You're already at 7, so you're
Right.
talking a decade before you change that behavior.
Well, I know. But the Board of Finance likes to ask us for the lower numbers, so.
So we're just going to
We're going to do what they do and say, can you give us
I think we
the,
make them do that work, but it's just me.
Okay, does anyone have any further questions for Joe?
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you
Thanks,
staying.
Joe. Thank you, Joe. We appreciate your work on this. It was a lot of work, and I appreciate all the time you put into it. We're moving on to appointments and resignations, and we'll see if we get this right. Everybody stop me if I get any of this wrong. The first, we have accept the resignation of Diana Yaisley, Democrat, as an alternate member of the Aging and Disability Commission, effective January 22nd, 2015.
I'll move that.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Appoint Diana Yaisley, Democrat, as a regular member of the Aging and Disability Commission with an expiration date of January 1st, 2019.
Move that.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Appoint Lorraine Doonan, Democrat, as an alternate member of the Aging and Disability Commission with an expiration of January 1st, 2016.
so moved?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Building Code Board of Appeals, accept the resignation of Stephen Antonio, Democrat, as an alternate member of the Building Code of Appeals effective January 22nd, 2015.
Move that.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Appoint Stephen Antonio as Democrat as a regular member of the Building Code of Appeals with an expiration date of January 1st, 2019.
Move that.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Fair Rent Commission, okay, this is where it gets tricky. I think we got this right, but stop me if anyone thinks we've got it wrong.
I think we're good.
A motion to reappoint Maddie Gilkey, Republican, John Paddock, Republican, Mary Turner, Republican, and Judy Schaefer, Democrat, to the Fair Rent Commission effective November 30th, 2011, with an expiration date of November 30th, 2015.
Move that.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Reappoint Connie Mason, Republican, David Richmond, Republican, and Helen Peterson, Democrat, to the Fair Rent Commission effective November 30th, 2013, with an expiration date of November 30th, 2017.
Move that.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Tourism Committee, accept the resignation of Sarah Ann Schultz, Republican, as regular I just have, that's just one person, is that right, Sean?
Correct.
Yes.
As a regular member of the Tourism Committee effective January 9th, 2015.
Move that.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
For the minutes, our minutes from the clerk, because of the storm, we did not get them in time to send them in your packet, so we'll just consider them at our next meeting. We do not need to, as you know, we don't need to move to approve them. They are as they are. We can amend them at the next meeting, though, if there are any changes. Moving on to Selectmen Liaison and Subcommittee reports, I will start with Personnel.
Yeah, we met tonight, Lisa. We did identify 2 tentative dates for the hearings, which we'll share, as well as continue to work out on the outlines to the meeting. So we made some good progress on that tonight.
Anyone else have any other updates? I'll just mention Open Space met, and we will be holding a public hearing with a presentation at the end of March on what to do with the Betty Hudson property, sort of where we are, what we know, and reach out to the community so we get feedback and start that process underway.
Cool.
The Aging and Disability Commission has decided to cancel their meeting for the night of the 17th so that their members can attend the public hearing on the senior center, and that meeting will be rescheduled the following week for the 24th.
Great.
Makes sense.
Okay. Any other updates? I will now take a motion to adjourn to discuss a public safety issue impacting the town of Simsbury.
Move that.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned to executive session.
Lisa, you would
What?
be just going?
No. What, an executive session will... No, we're going to go down to my office, because that's where the chocolate is.
Look at those eyes.
I'm shocked.
Thank you, guys.
Better than that. It's like a my pieces are all there. I have to just...